I was laid off, and I don't know how to deal with those struggles on a daily basis. I know someone who was laid off, and I don't know how to help. With more than 200,000 layoffs over the past 2 years in the tech industry and even across other industries, the issue with mental health of those impacted employees and even the non-impacted ones is definitely concerning. As I was going through social media posts and articles, I realized that there's a lot of help available, but mostly from the perspective of HR managers and business leaders who are probably part of the problem. And that's when I decided to reach out to someone who is part of the solution. Today, in this podcast, we are going to talk with Dr. Sandeep Atre, whom I have known for past 20 years. Dr. Sandeep Atre is a counseling psychologist and an internationally recognized emotional and social intelligence expert. He's the founder of Socialigence, a venture specializing in development of social and emotional intelligence through its e-learning course rooted in neuroscience and psychology. He's also co-founder of CH Edgemakers, a leading coaching group of India. He's author of two books related to his domain, namely Understanding Emotions Logically and Observing Nonverbal Behavior. His third book on various aspects of life is named Two Paras of Everyday Wisdom. The collection of his nazms and ghazals is published as a book titled Baat Jazbaat Ki. In his career of more than 2 decades, he has trained professionals of more than 50 companies and thousands of individuals to sort out and excel in intrapersonal and interpersonal matters. So let's start our podcast talking to Dr. Sandeep Atre. Hello, sir. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Mridul. It's always pleasure to see you.
Thank you. So, sir, as you have heard, layoffs are very common in these days, and we have seen this across the industries and across different age groups. So, no matter it's Gen Z, millennials, baby boomers, whatever generation you call. And just for the start, let's talk first about mental health, and then we'll talk about emotional intelligence, how emotional intelligence can play a part over handling the mental health. So, from your perspective, I wanted to start and understand, as a psychologist who talks to so many people, uh, what do you think is the impact of layoffs on mental health of employees and maybe even their family?
Mridul, talking first about employees, there's this really relevant anecdote that I just got reminded of while you were talking about layoffs. And it was related to probably Stanford. At least in the trainer circles, it is considered that it happened at Stanford. Put any Ivy League name there, and it'll still hold true. So the anecdote goes like this: that there is a B school class going on, and the class is on strategic management. And professor asks a question on the case that was already given to all the students a day before, and then professor asks this question. He says, "Okay, so tell me about the possible solutions." Because the company is going through a lot of struggle in terms of maintaining a break even. So there's a boy towards the back bench, and he kind of raises his hand half, and he says, "Well, I think Professor, layoff would be a very very good option here. I think cost cutting measures and layoffs." There is a silence. The expression on the face of professor changes, and then he says, get up and come here." The boy comes there. uh, he's a little tentative, and then professor, with almost red face, looks at that student and says, "You buffoon, you clown, you jester, you scoundrel, you worthless piece of shit, just get the hell out of this place first. I just do not want to see your bloody face. The boy is absolutely aghast. And while he's tentatively walking towards the door, Professor asks him to wait. He says, wait. And then he says, how did it feel? He said, insulted. Professor said, you know, my boy, that's exactly how it feels when you lay off somebody. The student takes a pause, looks at the professor and says, I think there can be a better option than layoff. Can I get back to the case? And he says, yeah, please go back to the case and choose a better option rather than laying people off. I genuinely think that this, story kind of encapsulates how a person who is being laid off or who got laid off feels. He or she feels insulted. He or she feels deserted. He or she feels, it's not about worklessness. He or she feels worthlessness. Suddenly, the entire focus of his or her adult life, which has been work, it is taken away from him or her. So the first feeling that he or she gets is a sense of worthlessness, and that can really wreak havoc in mind of that person. Now here, there's another point then that one needs to understand, that employee who was fired also feels as if he or she is not good enough. It is almost like a professional breakup. And how do you feel after a personal breakup? You feel, you start questioning everything that happened. You start questioning everything you stood for. You start questioning everything that you believed in. And that's precisely how an employee feels, a sense of worthlessness. So that's what messes it up.
Makes sense. In fact, I'll just add to it that, well, when it comes to layoff, I think it's a step more than, maybe a breakup or a divorce. Just for the very reason that it happens so suddenly that you don't really have time to even get used to it.
Very true.
And you
Very
start dealing with it after rather than, in breakup and probably divorce and other separations in general.
Very
There's
true.
some ramp up time, right?
I think
So
when you said it, I suddenly realized a better word would be betrayal rather than breakup.
makes sense. Makes sense. And just to take it to the next level, so you talked about mental health of employees. How about mental health of their family, for example? And because this is probably a community event, it's not just in specific to one individual or two individuals, right? So, what do you think has been your experience uh, listening or hearing or understanding about mental health of family, their family members?
Mridul, the problem with family members at such a point of time is that they feel a lot of ambiguity. They are in a confused state of mind for the obvious reason that if they try to show that everything is fine, then the person feels as if family doesn't care. If they try to show that the sky has fallen, the person who is already dealing with his own issues starts feeling heat and starts feeling as if his ability or her ability to take care of the family is being questioned. If they become too concerned, then the person gets on the back foot. If they become too indifferent, then he or she starts feeling that there is apathy. So the problem is that even if they become too motivational, then the person starts feeling as if they really don't empathize, they don't understand the gravity of situation, or they don't understand the extent of hurt that has got created. So the problem with family members is they just don't know what to do. And that
Makes sense.
kind of creates a very strange kind of pressure on them, because now you just do not know when to do what. And that's when their mental health takes a toll. Because, you know, I tell you, it's very strange, Mridul, but the the acronym that they gave at some point of time, VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. I think that's a very, very good, acronym here, for the obvious reason that the family goes through all of that, and especially ambiguity becomes a big problem, because ambiguity creates a mental pressure which is not so big that you start crying or you start howling or you start shouting. And and it is not as less that you can just stomach it. And that just the strange irritable form and extent of uh, mental pressure, that kind of creates a big problem in almost all family members. And I think that's how mental health of family members, it kind of takes toll.
Fair point. And I think to add one more aspect to it, not everyone, but still a lot of people also start having that pressure of the financial uncertainty. I mean, mental and taking care of the affected person is one aspect, but then financial uncertainty, in which case companies do a lot of financial severance packages. I mean, I don't know if that is enough or not, but that also, I believe, adds to the complexity, because then they are part of the whole situation. Now it's not just about supporting the affected person, but also being part of that situation, because now they
Right.
need to either extend their resources or plan new things, and all of that.
Very true.
So
Very true.
yeah. Fair. And let's also talk about one thing: non-impacted employees. So we feel that everything is hunky dory when we are not impacted, right? But I believe it also takes some pressure on them, maybe in terms of performance, maybe in terms of anxiety. At least that's what I've read. But have you seen any such? What has been your experience?
Well, when it comes to non-impacted employees, it's a very it's a double whammy. On one hand, they suddenly realize that world is no more a safe place, you know and at any point of time, if you ask a psychologist what hurts you more, it is not the problem, it is the anticipation of the problem. So the problem is that the one who got laid off has actually met the problem, but for everyone else who has still stayed on, who has still who has stayed on, or who is still on roles, for him or her, there is always this sword hanging. And that makes it very difficult, because now you're anticipating a problem. And if
Which may or may not.
yeah, which may or may not come, and you also don't know when. So the first is that the anticipation of a problem is always more you know debilitating than the problem itself. So one, they feel world is no more a safe place. So there is this lack of trust towards the world. Is it a safe place now? No. So all those who believed that world is fair, suddenly their faith gets questioned, and they're
And
anticipating.
and does it do you have maybe any data or anecdotes? Does it impact their performance, maybe on a short term or long term basis, uh, in general?
Well, very true. I think entirely by observation, or entirely by people whom I've come across and whom I've talked to, their performance drops, for the obvious reason that their performance um, is no more linked to sense of belonging for the company. it is no more out of inspiration, it is more out of desperation. And also it is very lukewarm. It is more just KRA basis. It's more
Survival.
related to JD. Yeah, it's just survival. And
Yeah.
at the same time, when we talk about these employees who are not affected by layoffs or non-impacted, as you call them, there is another thing that happens. As I said, it is double whammy. One is anticipation of a problem. They feel that the world is no more a safe place. Second, on the other hand, many of them feel you know a strange sense of very very little, yet a very you can sense it, sense of sadistic pleasure that this happened to someone else and not them.
Wow. Okay. That's an
And
interesting perspective.
yeah, and that that feeling of not being the one who suffered and someone else suffered, that pleasure actually makes them feel even more guilt, because most of them are in sound mental health. So
Hmm.
they also have this internal awareness that they are feeling something which should not be felt, but they are feeling it, because they now, when they go back home, they have somebody they can talk about. They can say, look, Sanjay is going through a real difficult time, or Dave has actually resorted to drinking, or something, the Shelja or the Mary, they are getting into a huge problem. And there's some kind of pleasure they start deriving out of discussions, and that kind of gives them even more guilt, because at some point of time they realize that they are actually enjoying it in a way. And that is the double whammy, because now for them, not only the world is a less safe place, but in their own eyes they're also a little inferior people.
Fair. Okay. Well, I have so many thoughts coming, but I'd like to at least touch the next point where we've talked about employees, family, and non-impacted employees, but I'm sure it's the employers who are going through this process also have a toll on them, right? What do you think has been uh, is the impact of layoffs on their mental health?
Oh, huge. First of all, their perception in the eyes of the market, it takes a huge dip, no doubt about that. And it is not just about market share. It's not about being a preferred employer or not, or probably their ratings or feedbacks on Glassdoor. It's not about that. I think more than that, uh, you know, people start feeling that the place is not fair. Now, if you see the person who is asking people to leave, the biggest problem with that person is that even after doing the wrong thing, it doesn't feel right. It's
Hmm.
always okay if you are doing a wrong thing and you feel right because you think that you're doing something good to somebody. But the problem is that if you take it entirely from commercial or business angle, then for you are doing it for stakeholders in other ways. And
Hmm.
especially stakeholders, you call them shareholders or you call them investors. But the problem is that those investors, those stakeholders, they're not really faces. They're not really names. They're just a category. While the people who are fired, they are faces and names. And that makes it very difficult, because for a category, you are, taking the blame or ill feeling from people who have faces and names. And it's never easy. So for employers, there is a lot of shame plus guilt. And the only way, probably, we'll talk about how to deal with it. The only way they can survive is to start looking at this whole problem from a different point of view. But I think I'm kind of jumping the questions. But coming back to employers, well, they go through shame, guilt, and they go through a lot of public humiliation in the sense that though the business fraternity, hails, or the business fraternity kind of, feels that it must be justified, but at the end of the day, every business, every organization is a social entity. And you believe it or not, if laws don't apply, ethics do.
Well, at the end, it's all business, and I think they have to. I mean, to their credit, they have to put a much strong face in this situation, because they cannot probably show emotions for so many
Yeah.
reasons, legal, financial, and other reasons. So totally makes sense. Okay. Let me ask you also, we have talked about the impact, but what do you think are the symptoms when people should really reach out to mental health experts? Because, I've seen, I mean, motivational gurus are one thing, leaders are one thing who give motivation talk and say, well, time will pass and things like that. But is there really a time when people should really seek mental health, reach out to experts rather than trying to deal with it on a daily basis?
Well, I think Mridul, they should not wait for symptoms to do something about it. I think they need to be proactive about it. I genuinely believe, and I say it on the behalf of almost the whole, fraternity of psychologists and psychiatrists, that it is important for these people who have got a hit, who have got a trauma, to be proactive. They should not wait before the damage is done. So proactively, they should reach out to somebody, not necessarily a psychiatrist or a psychologist like me, or people of my fraternity, but probably a counselor, a family counselor, a mentor, an elder in the family, whoever. I mean, whoever they trust. I mean, of course, if they reach out to a professional, that's better, but that is not mandatory. The problem is that if they take too long, then they will start believing that the hurt has got over. But the problem is that the hurt has not got over, it has got within. And gradually, they will realize that now it has become a part of their mental fabric. So before it does any permanent damage, it's important to talk about what you are feeling, how you are feeling, right at the outset. I almost see it this way, that if somebody has got fired, has begun to serve the notice period, then he or she should start talking about it with somebody, not on social media, for sure, not on social media, with someone in person, and preferably someone who can be a professional help. Because if you start talking about what is going on inside you, you have a sense of release, and that sense of release is extremely important. Having said that, if somebody doesn't really choose to do it proactively, if somebody waits for symptoms to come, then I'll go entirely by the book, and that is what we call DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. So if you go by DSM, then any sadness that has lasted for more than 2 weeks, so it is one of the criteria, that if sadness has lasted for more than 2 weeks, in spite of everything that you should do commonsensically, if it has not abated, then probably it's the right time that you go and talk to someone for professional help. One, if it has stayed for more than 2 weeks. Second, if you have had a very, vehement, angry episode, or you have had an episode which is very uncharacteristic of you, which was very disproportionate, and which was very out of place. So, uncharacteristic, disproportionate, and out of place. If you have such an episode of any vehement emotion, be it anger or sadness, then it is a good time. Now, it can be panic attack. It can be, an anxiety episode. But any uncharacteristic, disproportionate, and out of place episode, or if the emotion has lasted for more than 2 weeks, in spite of doing everything commonsensical, I think then one should reach out. But the best way, as I said, is you should not wait for symptoms to appear. You should take it proactively.
Fair. And I think there's definitely some complexity to it, because I mean, I think one point you said is don't do it on social media, which I feel a lot of people these days believe it helps them release their emotions and probably even reach out to the community, which is probably okay. I mean, is there a reason why you say not do it on social media? Just
Yes,
curious.
Pradul. Yes, Pradul. Because on social media, you get reactions. And those reactions either make you feel like a hero. So you get all the sympathy. You get, these, brownie points of self-esteem that you have kind of, you've kind of, stood for a cause. And at the same time, you start feeling that you are doing it on behalf of those who have not been able to do it, and all those emotions. And those emotions are masking emotions. So they
Hmm.
would come and they would mask the real emotion that you're feeling. And if you have a masking emotion coming into your system before you have released the original emotion that got generated, then it does more damage. So one, you feel like a hero. Or second, you end up becoming a a little more sensitive towards what people think about your issues, which is necessarily not so good for mental health. Because if you are feeling a lot of support, because there are a lot of people who have given you support, ask anybody who has put in such kind of a post after being laid off, and just imagine the person gets 6,000 likes, and the person gets 450 comments, out of which 400 comments are straight, 400 comments are lauding or are supporting, and then you suddenly get two comments which are almost accusing you of becoming a crybaby, because social media is not moderated.
Yeah,
So the moment you see it, suddenly
it
the
brings
bubble
you down. Yeah,
gets burst.
yeah.
And that is when you start believing that world is not a fair place, even on social media, which was never supposed to be
Mhm.
the so fair place. So you become even more vulnerable, you become even more caring about what people think about you.
You
And
become
it is,
reactive. Yeah,
yes, and it is not about what people think about you, it's about what you think about you. And what
correct.
you think about you, if it gets changed by what people think about you, then I think it is dangerous.
Yeah, it's very volatile. I mean, I'll just add some color to it. So basically, from my perspective, I feel, yeah, it. So those reactions are transient. First thing. So you see 6,000 comments, 6,000 likes, and 400 comments, like you said, and then it suddenly fizzles out, and you're like, okay, it's not leading anywhere. And
Yes.
again, at a time when you're trying to deal with those emotions, I totally agree. When you see those two negative comments, you start to debate internally again. So that cycle is, you're not getting out of the cycle in a way, which kind
Very
of
true.
makes sense. Uh, Fair. I think I had some more thoughts, but I'll just hold on to them as you were speaking. Uh, one last thing I'll say is it's probably okay for people uh, to reach out to people. You said one thing that reach out to your close people, if not mental health expert, because not everyone may have access to you know. But then at least even though, like you said in the past, that family members are also dealing with it, but I feel that the bonding will get better. There's a bridge that will form if you talk to people, even if you don't have access to mental health experts. So just to correct it, I mean, just so that somebody doesn't feel, well, it's a chicken and egg problem. Does it make sense?
Oh, it does. It does.
Yeah. Fair. Okay. So I think, yeah, we have talked about the impact, we have talked about the symptoms. Let's talk about, and you have fairly touched about the treatment, but do you want to add anything more on how, we spoke about this initially, Layoffs are a tsunami of emotions. You deal with those emotions on a daily basis. Every day you get up, you have an emptiness, you have a lot of loss of trust, you have a loss of self-confidence, maybe sometimes vengeance, anger, frustration, guilt, all those things. It's a tsunami of emotions. You don't know what will evoke any day or during the day. So, do you want to add anything more on how people can treat or deal with
Yes.
those in addition to reaching out to a mental health expert?
Yes. In fact, reaching mental health, as I said, mental health expert is something that proactively you should do. However, even if that doesn't happen, or even if you want to reach out to somebody at a later date, what you should conceptually understand is that Mridul, the last thing you can expect to help you is to stay in denial. Now, what do I mean by denial? You cannot deny that there is a problem. You cannot say that it's fine, it happens to everyone, it's fine. Let's man up, let's own up, let's make sure that you take it on your chin, and you kind of go back to the fight when your heart is hit. I think that's the last thing that you should think of. The first thing you should do is you should acknowledge the pain it has created. You should acknowledge the suffering that you're feeling. You should acknowledge that you got hurt. You should acknowledge that you felt cheated, that you felt inadequate, that there are now questions, there are fundamental existential questions that are coming in. You should acknowledge and talk about it. And it is not about, crying over spilt milk. It is not about that. It is about the feelings that have got generated, the emotions that have got generated in the wake of such a major life event. They are supposed to get a release. And in the name of being mature, being brave, if you sit on those emotions, then do not forget that in a way emotion is energy in motion. It is energy mobilization, and energy can neither be created nor destroyed, it can only change one form to another. So at some point of time, you would realize that whatever you felt in the name of maturity, you did to mask those emotions. It would be counterproductive. And at some point of time later in life, I think whatever you set upon, it'll come up. So, first, acknowledge, talk about. Second, it's important to not keep talking about it all the time. You need to talk about it in a systematic manner, in a methodical manner. It cannot be a part of everyday conversations every time, because then you trivialize it. At the same time, at some point of time, you start losing interest in the very ring of it. It doesn't sound right even to you, and there is a lot of self pity that gets created. But there is another thing: denial. No way. Don't go on a vacation. Don't tell yourself, oh, it's a welcome break that I always looked for. Don't tell yourself, great, let's hike. Okay, let's go to parents and spend some quality time with them. There is a blessing in disguise. No. I think you are now creating another problem, because what you just lost, you need to make sure that you gain it. But you need to make sure doesn't mean you get desperate about it. You get focused on making sure that your professional identity that has just got shattered, it starts to again get back to some shape. So what do you do about it? Well, very clearly, you need to have, first of all, a very clear schedule for the day. If in the wake of such a major life event, your schedule for the day starts getting really eccentric, really strange, really disorganized, then the problems will begin. So make sure that you wake up on time, you go for a jog, you come back, make breakfast for yourself or for family members, have breakfast on time, and just the way you used to do a job, now do your job. And that is to look for opportunities. you know, to look for opportunities, to make a very clear, discrete, directed effort to, get back to work. As simple as that. If you make your job of finding a job your job for time being, then the problems will be easier. Because in any case, you were doing something for someone. Now you're doing something for yourself. So make sure that if you were working from 9 to 1, now your work for 9 to 1 is looking for work. Then you take a break, lunch break. So take a break from 1 to 2. And then if in usual times you would work from 2 to 6, then now from 2 to 6, again, try to look for, work, or to create an opportunity in which you can come in people's eyes in a manner that would come across as productive, constructive, and contributive. So my point is, either work on your work or try to find or get back to work. But choose the attitude of job, choose the attitude of working. And just the way at 6 o'clock, you would wrap it all up, and then you would go for a long drive, or probably you would take, your kid to, some place or beach, or, a garden or something like that. Do it. So don't struggle all the time. Your struggle should end just the way your work used to end. And do not see it as a struggle. See it as your work for a while.
Hmm. It's
I
interesting.
think
Sorry, please complete. Yeah.
no, I think you were saying something.
Well, I mean, obviously, when you're speaking, a lot of things are going through my mind, and it seems counterintuitive. Some of what you said seems counterintuitive, and I just feel people would be like, well, it's better to take that break and re-energize yourself, channelize energy. So, I mean, I
That's
think what
okay.
you're saying probably is
That's
taking it with a pinch of salt, right? It's not in absolute
yes.
terms.
Mridul, in fact, what you said, it is good to do it. But
Yeah.
it is good to do it just in the proportion that you would do when you were in job.
Hmm.
So when you were in job, you would always have a getaway time, or you would always have a time when you
Vacation.
would take a vacation.
Yeah.
So if your struggle has gone for 1 month, if you take, after every 20 days, you take 3 days for, hiking, or, whatever it is, trekking, then do it. But don't do
Fair.
it again. Don't do it in a manner that suddenly defeats the most important priority of your life. And that is getting back, to work. And, you should not become disillusioned about it. Neither
Hmm.
desperate nor disillusioned about it. You should also not exploit that time to, derail yourself from your careers. I see a lot of people, trying to see it as an opportunity that is God sent or something like that. But those stories are like, 5 in 100. For
Yeah.
95 people, nothing great happens after layoff. They again have to find
Yeah.
another job, and they have to get back to career. So for those 5 people, I understand that, they are exceptions, but exceptions do not prove a rule wrong. Exceptions prove there is a rule.
Fair. I mean, obviously, it applies on an individual. What you said needs to be taken in the context of every individual, how
Yes,
solid they are, how they deal with situations, what is their
very
personal
true.
situation. I totally get that part because some people do feel taking a break, some people do feel, and interestingly, probably just yesterday, I was reading an article where it was like a vicious circle because you're trying to search for a job in these times when there are no jobs, and those constant rejections further pull you down, right? So it just depends how you deal with that situation. If you think that
Yes.
makes you feel more confident, sure, I believe, but
you
otherwise
you
you
have
need to
to
assess.
Yes, Mridul, but you have to do it with a certain clinical approach, a certain dispassionate approach, matter of factly manner. You're supposed to do it almost as if it is a job. You're
And
not
that's where,
supposed
yeah.
to, yeah. You're supposed to focus on the process. You're not supposed to focus on the result.
Fair. And that's where it's important to also loop in other people who are around you, your support circle, your core support circle, because then they'll keep you grounded, they'll keep you on track, and they won't really, I mean, even if you're facing adversities during that job search or whatever job you are trying to do, they'll at least you have someone to talk, because for example at work you are interacting with so many people and suddenly you are all alone. So I think it's
Very true.
better to make that a community event, at least with your strong support system.
Very
Fair.
true.
Well, I think I would like to touch one important thing, which is emotional intelligence, because you have that solid background and people don't really easily understand how emotional intelligence can play a role in this situation. So, for example, we just said people put up posts, and not just the impacted person, but even others, they say, okay, reach me out for help, and they probably feel it's emotionally intelligent to do, showing support, showing care, or maybe they just want to show a positive side of that. But usually, how can emotional intelligence be put in this context for each of the persons we earlier spoke? That how can they have emotional and have or perform emotionally intelligent things to help the impacted people, impacted employees, and even the employers? uh, I would like to hear your, expert uh, understanding on that.
Yes. Nazul, in fact, whatever I have talked about, it is typically in context of emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence as a construct, um, though I'll try to talk about it in terms of a model. The socialigence, we call it socialigence model. That is our organization's name. And it's a corporate model. The three things that we talk about, awareness, attunement, and adaptability. So emotional and social intelligence, at the end of the day, it is about three A's: awareness, attunement, and adaptability. So in any situation, first be aware of your own emotions in every situation, then stay attuned with other people's emotions. And then, on the basis of awareness and attunement that you have, choose the most appropriate response in a situation. An appropriate response in terms of the primary goals of that situation, which is called adaptability. So the point is that awareness, attunement, adaptability, these three A's, you're supposed to apply in spite of being laid off or in spite of not being laid off. Because emotional intelligence is, in fact, a way of living life. It is not a way of solving problems. You don't have to use it when something has gone wrong. You have to use it so that everything stays right. Even when something goes wrong, you stay right, or as close to right as possible. So it starts with awareness. I think the first thing that you should listen to is your body. I genuinely think that it's a beautiful line. It's in fact title of the book, a title of a book. It says that every body uh, is speaking, and every body tells you something. And here, every body means body actually. So listen to your autonomic nervous system signals. Listen to the signals of perspiration. Listen to the signals of palpitation. Listen to the signals of that dry throat, or listen to that signal of feeling a pit in the stomach, or a void. Listen to what is going on inside. If you're not sleeping well, listen to it. If you're waking up weak or tired, listen to it. If you're becoming extraordinarily irritable, then listen to it. Stay aware of how you are feeling, and that feeling Emotion is actually a physiological concept. It you can feel it in your body. You can feel that your respiration is changing, your perspiration is changing, your palpitation is changing. So listen to that, and also listen to your biases, listen to your complexes, listen to your pent up emotions. That is awareness. And then, of course, make sure that when you have felt them, when you have named them, labeled them, then also be in touch with other people's emotions. Typically in your family, typically in your inner circle, as you said, core circle or support system, listen to their emotions as well, observe their emotions as well. Because if you have lost a job, then please understand that probably a whole family has lost a livelihood, or probably has lost as you rightly put, resources or access to resources. So listen to their emotions as well, empathize. And then it is important to understand that the two ways in which you can deal with what you have gathered in terms of data through awareness and attunement, one is release and second is closure. Now try to find a sense of release for yourself, and try to give the privilege of finding a sense of release to people around you. So first, sense of release, and second, sense of closure. That means that episode that has happened, there has to be a sense of closure around it. You have to, you know I mean, there's a wonderful line by one of the psychologists, and it says that if you give meaning to your suffering, it becomes bearable. So try to give a meaning to that suffering. Try to give a certain name to that suffering. For instance, now it's time to upskill. Now it's time to reskill. Now it's time to look for what I really want to do in life. I mean, of course, then you're supposed to do something about it as well. But at the end of the day, you have to apply that awareness, attunement, and adaptability. Now, you also mentioned something very interesting, that when you're applying for a job and you get rejected, then you feel even more bad. Well, you should not feel more bad. It comes automatically, you feel bad. But what do you feel after you feel bad is what emotional intelligence is. Emotional intelligence is not about whether you feel bad or not. So an emotionally intelligent person will feel bad. But what does he or she do after feeling bad? That's what makes him or her emotionally intelligent. So after
Hmm.
after you have felt bad, now try to dissect that emotion. Why did you feel bad? What is it that is making you so miserable? What is it that is making you so angry? Is it the fact that for the first time you realized that you had reached middle level in hierarchy without really earning it? Or probably you haven't really upskilled, but just because you have been into your work for 12 years, a kind of momentum took you there. Is it now a sense of infallibility that you always had which got broken? So my point is that it's okay to feel bad, but after that again apply the same awareness, attunement, adaptability, and you would realize that this whole process of applying these three A's over and over again, you would stay emotionally and mentally sorted, not happy. Please understand, you'll remain sorted. And sorted means there will be times when you'll be happy, when you'll be sad, when you'll be angry, when you'll be fearful. But none of those emotions would take over you. And that's precisely what is the secret of mental health and emotional well being.
Wow, well put. Well, that was deep. I think so. One thing that comes to my mind in this situation, I see what you're saying from the person who's impacted, right? But I've also seen situations where when you have been working so long with people and you've been revered, you have been appreciated when you are at work, and suddenly when that gets cut, you're like, well, nobody values me anymore, right? Well, or even I've heard from people who are on the other side, non-impacted, that they wanted to reach out, but they were hesitant. They were probably, they are dealing with their own emotions, like you said, right? They are unsure if they should reach out. They don't know what what is the right thing to do. Should they reach out or not? Any message for them? Any sort of you know uh, what do you think? How can they deal with it? Because they have been working. They probably respect or they appreciate if there's their junior, if there is their report, if they appreciate someone who's their senior, but then they are hesitant now because they don't know how to reach out and bring that closure. How do you think they can uh, cross that bar, that friction?
Well, I think, Mridul, every crisis is pregnant with opportunity. So, because this is crisis, and because now there is a certain amount of awkwardness, there is a certain amount of ambiguity, there is a certain amount of adversity. That is precisely what is the sign of an adult brain is. What the sign of adult brain is, that adult brain can deal with these three A's. Now, these three A's are separate from those three A's. Okay. Now, these three A's are awkwardness, ambiguity, and adversity. So now just imagine if you are a junior. So I think you have now two, three A's. One is awareness, attunement, adaptability, and second is awkwardness, ambiguity, and adversity. So just imagine if Mridul's boss gets fired, and Mridul's boss was a very important figure in his life, and now the man is, you can see the man is falling apart. You can see that the man who always was an inspiration, who always was a sign of strength, you suddenly realize, Mridul, that even God has feet of clay. And then you realize, oh, now I can do something for him, but I cannot really cross that, uh, that notional gap that was always there of looking up to that man. Now just imagine, how does it make you feel? It makes you feel awkward.
Correct.
It makes you feel a lot of ambiguity inside. So what do you do now? Well, nothing. You face that awkwardness and ambiguity and reach out. And when you reach out now, you don't reach out when the awkwardness ends. You don't reach out when the ambiguity ends. When you reach out, the awkwardness ends, the ambiguity ends. And that's where it is important for almost everyone to realize that such extraordinary circumstances should inspire in you that one leap that you have not taken for all these years, that you have never thought about. And it is important that you do it even when you feel awkward, even when you feel ambiguous. So, all you people who are listening to this podcast of Mridul, please realize, at the end of the day, the person might feel bad, but the person will feel valued, unless, of course, you choose very wrong words to convey your sentiment, which I don't think people would. If at all you feel that you do not know how to use the right word, then probably use less number of words or use gestures, or as I said, the second A of emotional and social intelligence, first get attuned to what that person is currently feeling, and then adapt, customize, optimize, personalize your communication.
Well, I think we are almost at time as well, but we have covered a lot of ground in the past 1 hour, and if you have any closing points, please do so. But I feel I have covered a lot of ground with mental health and emotional intelligence of both sides. But please, if you have any final comments, uh,
Well, I think, Pradul, my final comments on this would be that emotional intelligence is all about being receptive and open towards the whole palette of emotions. And on a color palette, you'll have beautiful colors like pink and sky blue. and all colors are beautiful. But if I go typically by a certain notional criteria, you'll have a beautiful pink, you'll have a beautiful purple, you'll have a beautiful sky blue, and then there would be colors which would not be considered as beautiful, probably a dark brown, or probably light gray, or anything like that, or jet black as they would call it. But still, every emotion has a place on that palette. And whenever you would like to draw something, color something, you would find that all those emotions, oh, sorry, all those colors. I think I almost, kind of made sure that you get the subtle hint, everyone who's listening. All those colors, they have a utility. As you will go on your life journey, and as your life journey will go on, you would realize that all those emotions that you felt during such a phase, if you acknowledge them, make them a part of your emotional palette, you'll not only become a more emotionally rich person from inside, but you would also find them of a lot of utility when you will try to attune into someone else's emotions. Because if somebody has not been bold and beautiful, he or she cannot be old and beautiful. So it's important for everyone to understand that what life has brought to you, accept it and learn from it, and then evolve.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Again, I think it's been very enriching experience talking to you, and I hope people get benefit of this because I literally couldn't find any podcast talking with a real mental health expert. I hope this proves useful for a lot of people out there. Thank you, and have a good night. Thanks for taking out time.
Thank you for having me here. And it was wonderful, Mridul. And thank you for bringing this concept to everyone out there. Bye bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.